I mean, honestly, they're all.
Check, check. All right. All right, that'll help a little bit with sound. All right, so what did y'all think of the debate last night? No, you didn't watch it? Who watched it? Let me see the show hands. All right, we'll watch you over here. Give me a couple thoughts. Who won the night?
Oh, well, who won the night? I think it's I think she wins. But also, I really agree that these answers. I mean, although it probably was scripted yesterday, it's going to get that much thing. I feel like it just like really showed like he was very emotional.
Yeah, all right, I'm with that.
I didn't think Biden and Bernie did that well. Like,
No.
I think I was expecting more from them. And like Biden kept like messing up with Bernie. I don't think had the best answers.
No, Bernie did not always have the best answers. What are you feeling?
Yeah, I agree with him. I just felt that it was fun.
Very good.
Mayor, yeah, so Mayor Pete did really well. The pundits are saying this morning that Kamala killed it. I mean, they were like, holy cow, she's now in the front race or in the front runner. She was not polling super high before that event. And so the fact that she came in and was able to grab control of the stage, she had the line of the night. Just about everybody's. So all the candidates are talking, they're all talking at once. And Kamala interjects as the whole stage is, like 4 or 5 people are talking at once. And Kamala interjects and she says, American people don't want to witness a food fight. They want to figure out how we're going to put food on the table. It's like, So anyway, it was a good line, and I'm confident we'll hear a few more good lines here in a second. We're going to go through and ask everyone to kind of give it your best, give it your all. We want to speak with energy. We want to speak with passion. We want to show us, be proud of what you're about to say, because I guarantee it's good. And so we're going to give a big round of applause. We're going to rotate through. We've got 15 people, so we're going to take a break after 8 people go. We'll stretch our arms, stretch our legs. I'm going to scoot this camera a little bit closer, but I think it's important to recognize that, yes, you want to pan and look to everyone in the room, but that little white dot at the top of the camera, if you're really trying to hammer it home for somebody who's not here, that's the place where you need to focus. So without further ado, is there someone who would like to start us off? We need to rock, paper, scissors. All right, much appreciated. Come on down. Big round of applause. That is close as we can. I'm recording. All right, round of applause to set the stage. That's kind of weak.
Yeah, it's super hot, so if you'll notice the reverb, and so we'll catch it. So
Okay.
it's projected.
That's fine. We're good. What is the biggest problem facing America today? Statistically, it is gun usage and abuse. Imagine sitting in a classroom, cramming for an exam 1 minute, and the next minute having to run for your life. Sadly, for my hometown of Parkland, Florida, this became a reality. On February 4th, 2014, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School fell victim to a terrible school shooting that killed 17 people, 4 of which I was close friends with. Sadly, this is not an isolated event, but a normality in the United States today. The United States has more school shootings and gun violence than any other country on this planet. From attacks like the Vegas massacre to the Colorado movie theater massacre, the trend is clear. We need to take action now, and it must be now. As Daniel Webster of Johns Hopkins University explains in 2017, that more than 90 people lose their lives to gun violence every single day in the United States alone. The solution, however, is very clear: universal background checks. The White House news blog in 2013 explains that taking away guns from criminals will be the most important action that we can take to reduce gun violence. Universal background checks will achieve just that, by ensuring that the weapons do not get into the hands of the wrong people. There are 3 distinctive reasons why imposing universal background checks will be vital to reduce the deadly trend of gun violence in the United States. Firstly, universal background checks will eject criminals from getting guns. The National Action Alliance in January of 2017 reports that statewide background checks have currently stopped more than 3 million dangerous individuals from getting guns. This number would only expand if you included these background checks to all 50 states on the federal level. Secondly, universal background checks will help close deadly loopholes. Currently, there is a loophole in the United States that enables individuals to have weapons sold at a gun show or over the internet without the conduction of a background check. Imagine this. Imagine that I'm an 18-year-old and I legally buy a gun. I can give this gun to whoever I want if they are over the age of 18. There is no background check on that transfer of gun ownership. There is no regulation on that transfer. I can give it to anyone I want. I can give it to a convicted felon. I can give it to someone with severe mental health disabilities who might not know how to understand a weapon. That is not something we can stand for. Surprisingly, this is a reality in the United States today. Universally imposed background checks can close this terrible loophole, as all transfers of gun ownership for a firearm would have to be regulated by a database that can track people. Thirdly, universal background checks will help prevent suicides. Suicides by firearm are at an all-time high now, as Kim Scofield of the Center for Prevention of Suicide in 2014 finds that an upward of 20,000 Americans killed themselves with guns in 2016 alone, which accounted for more than half of overall suicides in the United States. Scofield furthers that without easy access to guns, suicide rates would drop from 20% by firearm, would drop by 20% to 38% in America because other methods are less effective and socially stigmatized. Scofield isn't the only qualified author who has come to this conclusion, but Hempstead in 2017 found in an empirical analysis that restricting access to lethal means has been identified as the most effective approach to preventing suicide. This approach has not only empirically worked on the universal background checks level, but there are numerous other examples of when petitioning Congress was successful. The We the People initiative allows citizens to launch petitions about issues they care about most. A recent example is the landmark Supreme Court case in which the same-sex marriage was legalized, something that was achieved in part because of petitions to Congress. The landmark U.S. versus Windsor case ruled in favor of Windsor on a 5-4 decision, which ultimately legalized same-sex marriage in the United States and set a precedent for the LGBTQ+ community. This initiative was passed in large part due to movements across the country as well as challenges in the lower court, which eventually ended up in the Supreme Court. It is these grassroots movements and this kind of petitioning that should be applied to universal background checks, and it has been. In my home state of Florida, after the Parkland shooting, state legislators passed bills to raise the age to buy AR-15s from 18 to 21 and ban bump stocks and extended magazines outright. It is this action that not only we need to take on the state level, but on the federal level as well. We need to petition our local congresspeople. We need to make tangible change, and we need to end the terrible cycle of gun violence in the United States of America. Thank you.
round of applause at the stage.
No, I'll just.
Oh, okay. We were giving you a round of applause to come on forward because we felt like momentum was happening there. No? Good. Somebody else.
Carter.
All right, Tyler, calling somebody.
Carter.
All right.
The most important decision someone can make is for what purpose they're going to live their life. Many believe that the solution to living a well-rounded, respectable life is working towards success and having something to show for when they pass away, whether it's a massive estate, an impressive bank account, or a family legacy. A large portion of the population avidly seeks this success in their field of work, struggling through long-hour days in order to satisfy their boss, their family, or even themselves. At least 90% of U.S. adults say they are very or somewhat satisfied with their family life, their education, and the way they spend their leisure time, according to the Gallup Poll Social Series. These people are determined to climb the ladder of success, fighting tooth and nail to reach the top until they believe they've crossed the finish line. Many times, this way of life results in a sense of purpose and can remedy a spirit. There is no denying that there is great value rooted in enjoying the fruit of hard work. Aside from hard work and reaping the benefits of financial or social success, part of the population satisfies their soul with freedom. The freedom of having family they can call their own. The freedom of seeing the light of life through activities and objects. Oftentimes, liberty and living a life of little restriction is enough for someone to feel purpose. On the opposite end, some think that humanity and the world are curdling into something pathetic and cheap. According to Dr. Timothy J. Legg from Healthline.com, there are 6 major types of depression, affecting upwards of 16 million people every year in the U.S. It is common, as I've seen, for people to be convinced that they are simply droning through life, with no determination and no momentum that drives them from day to day. While they may be surrounded by love and admirable achievements, they feel desolate and stranded. They would give anything for the dark veil clouding their view of the world to be lifted. These people are more than capable of feeling tinges of satisfaction and pride for themselves in their work, such as being promoted or getting a diploma. However, this success is only temporary and on the surface. In reality, they are sinking deeper and deeper into a pit of fire, one that is fueled by depression and a lack of purpose. These people that are with us and around us at any given moment have broken souls, ones that lack light and freedom, along with satisfaction and passion. In my mind, the solution to this age-old battle between mind and soul is the acknowledgement of one's own moral compass and the pursuit of that guiding light. Personally, opportunity, action, respect, and all things good can be found through the acknowledgement and recognition of a higher power. God, or whatever you believe in, has the power to plant the seed of a new life into anyone. This life is not perfect by any means, as anyone is susceptible to pain and misery. But this life is the only opportunity we have to live a content and comfortable life. Rather than living on autopilot, this life of serving a higher power is how we flower into something that is not of this earth.
Carter, why don't you go and see somebody else here?
The world is often compared to a glass. this comparison comes the classic questions. Is the glass half empty or half full? Is the viewer an optimist or a cynic? What is never asked, though, is how to fill the glass. Optimism means trying to fill it through vague patience. It means saying we are equal, saying to love each other, saying respect for all. Optimism means having a vision, but a hazy one that is too dreamlike to grasp. There is no acceleration to this kind of vision, just momentum that starts somewhere between now and eventually. Where is the action behind the hopeful words? Words saying to soar, but ignoring our lack of wings. Words saying to seize the opportunity, but never identifying where the opportunity is. What divides the optimist from the cynic isn't the capacity for vision. Cynics have vision too. Theirs is simply one distorted beneath the glare of a red light. Every flower is food for a fire to shudder and sizzle and shrivel beneath its heat. Maintaining the flame's level size, strength, rage. Filling the glass is impossible, says the cynic. Where there is sugar, it is bound to be melted and left to sit until the air smells saccharine, sickly. The cynic does not acknowledge progress. Every man stands blindfolded on an open field, their fear of sinking into the unfamiliar, leaving them clinging to a chain for guidance. They move, hand over hand, hoping to end up somewhere better, until they realize the chain is one giant circle. With wariness and prejudice cementing their hands to their lifelines now, they find themselves motionless, on the exact spot they began. Cynicism has acceleration, but one that is fueled by violence as the only means of change, of flipping the system instead of transforming it. Is this flawed? What should the vision be? A vision of freedom and of equity like the optimist? One that seems as outlandish and as intangible to the man of the present as the optimist dream? It needs to be sharper. A vision needs to be formed in the awareness that human nature produces need for understanding. We want a world that is normal, one we can wrap our heads around, one we can claim to know. There will always be those who are dreamers that take no comfort in blindness, but most hope to one day drop to the ground, with hands comfortably wrapped around their chains, to live the rest of their lives motionless in their confidence and their ignorance. Children, though, children have no blindfolds. They make no claim to already know the world. They leap from chain to chain, with eyes flitting quickly from side to side, absorbing any and everything. And if they see themselves, and neighbors and strangers, with respect packing the spaces in between, it becomes part of the world they understand. And as those who desire to rest grow into their blindfolds, they lock their feet on top of the vision. They call reassuringly back. Some will stay behind. But when those that follow reach the end of the field, they find they care less about whether the glass is half empty or half full, less about how to fill it, and more about why they need a glass in the first place. Thank you.
Ask someone else to go next, please.
Anna?
Imagine yourself coming home from a long day. You woke up at 6 a.m., ate breakfast, refilled your water bottle at your fridge. You know, the usual. You get to school and take like 3 tests, but you probably only passed one because you didn't study last night, due to the fact that you had migraines. Later, you finally make it home and are just exhausted. You fill up a cup of water and gulp that down. Then you fill up another and head into your living room to watch TV. You are so exhausted that you fall asleep right there on your couch. This is just how it is, until one day it isn't. Because one day, you die right there on your couch because the water you kept drinking from your fridge was contaminated. There is a constant problem arising from dumping things like oil down your drain because it contributes to contaminating drinking water. When people drink contaminated water, they may experience diarrhea, nausea, intestinal or stomach cramping, intestinal or stomach aches and pains, dehydration, and death. In the US, places that have experienced unclean water include Flint, Michigan, Baltimore, Maryland, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C., Brady, Texas, Dos Palos, California, Charleston, West Virginia, Newburgh, New York, and so many more. It was found that oil buildups caused about 47% of the 36,000 sewer overflows that happen annually in the US. When oil is thrown down in the drain, it accumulates in sewer pipes. If the flow of water is restricted due to the accumulation, it can cause untreated wastewater to back up into homes. The untreated sewage from these overflows can contaminate our waters, causing serious water quality problems, which will ultimately cause people to have unclean drinking water. To those who put things like oil down the drain and haven't seen any effects, there are consequences for putting oils down the drain that may not immediately show, but will in time. All in all, your cooking oils that you throw down the drain pours death down the throats of us all. In the last decade, about 63 million Americans experience having unclean drinking water. This means that nearly 1/5 of Americans went without clean water at some point in the last 10 years. You contribute to this when you continue to put things like oils down your drain. It costs millions to treat the water to make it clean again, and that money will come out of your pocket to clean it. One way that you can avoid this is by not throwing oils, fats, and other greases down the kitchen sink. Instead, you can recycle the used cooking oil or properly dispose it by pouring it into a sealable container and placing that sealed container in the trash. You can also wipe pots, pans, and dishes with dry paper towels before rinsing and washing them. By doing this, you can prevent contributing to water sources being contaminated, and you won't have to worry about having clean water in the future. That's why you should stop dumping things like oil in your sink. Thank you.
And is there somebody who can ask to go next, please?
When I was 12, I had a teacher who used to grab my face, stroke my hair, and rub my chest and stomach. He did it to the other girls in the classroom, but no one said anything about it. I talked to my best friend about it because I knew he'd been doing the same thing to her, but she said it was normal for men to be friendly like that. It continued to happen, and it kept getting worse, so I reported him to administration. Nothing happened. He had been at the school for over 20 years, and I realized he was more important than my own safety. I was too scared to confront him or tell my parents, so I finished the school year without saying a word. 4.5 years later, I go back to the school for a program and run into him. He proceeds to grab my waist, but I put my hand up for a high five this time, destroying all his hopes of being able to touch me. I asked some of the middle school girls at the program if he does anything out of the ordinary to them, and they confirm that he touches them inappropriately. This behavior is very common within the school system. A lot of people don't realize this. If I could go back in time, I would have made a bigger deal about it. We need to start educating everyone what to do when they see or experience sexual harassment and assault. This needs to start in elementary school so it can have a lasting effect on people. And I'm not just talking about teachers assaulting students. Some of your own classmates have probably experienced it or even committed acts of assault themselves. Excuses need to stop being made. They say, oh, it's just locker room talk, or, oh, they were in high school, they didn't know any better. Oh, my favorite one is, why would you report him and ruin his career like that? The American Association of University Women, AAUW, reported in their 2000 survey on students from 8th through 11th grade that roughly 81% of them had experienced some form of sexual harassment at their school. 83% of them were girls. Think about it, 83%. Think about 5 of your closest friends that are girls. 4 out of those 5 will experience some form of sexual harassment before they graduate high school. I shouldn't have to go to school with the fear that I might get raped by the baseball coach, or that the guy who follows me around will call me names like I'm a piece of meat in the market. The U.S. Department of Justice reported that 1 in 2 rape victims are under age 18, and 1 in 6 are under 12. Another study conducted on high school boys showed that 60% of them said it was acceptable to force a girl into sex under certain circumstances. Certain circumstances? What does that even mean? It should be unacceptable at all times. No absolutely means no. If you have to pressure someone into having sex with you, they don't want it. There's a lot of confusion surrounding the topic. A lot of people don't really know what constitutes sexual harassment versus sexual assault. So what is it? To me, sexual harassment is the unwanted, inappropriate sexual advances, such as touching or even language. Sexual assault is a form of sexual harassment that's usually physical. Basically, sexual assault is sexual harassment, but sexual harassment doesn't necessarily mean it's sexual assault. One big reason why people don't believe harassment happens is because only half of high school rape victims told anyone about it. Many times, the victim feels helpless or scared because they think either he or she will be threatened if the truth is told, or in my case, no one will do anything about it. What I want you guys to take away from this is that we all need to come together in order to stop this. We go to school to learn, and it should be a safe environment for all. If you see someone being harassed, or hear about it, or even experience it, make a promise to speak up. Make an effort to join a group in your school that recognizes and aims to prevent it. You can even start one yourself if your school doesn't have one. For example, I'm in an organization my friend established called It's On Us that goes around our school teaching classes about what the meaning of consent is and what to do in a situation of sexual misconduct. We work hand in hand with our principal, and she helps us implement the subject in the classroom curriculum. We soon plan to go to the district to get the group started at every school in my hometown, Memphis, Tennessee. Don't sit off to the side and just let it happen. When you do that, you become part of the problem. Don't be the problem, be the solution. Thank you.
That's great. Anybody who would like to encourage?
I would like for everyone to take a moment and to look around the room. What do you see? The walls, the decoration, what can you notice about it? I do not think it was the fact that it incorporated the arts. Art flows throughout life. It gives beauty to things. It changes people. I've seen that. But maybe your existing perception of the value of the arts did not allow you to see that as I did. The problem goes beyond us. Schools all across America are cutting funds and shutting down the countless art programs. State Department of Education data suggests that in Oklahoma alone, schools ended 1,100 fine arts classes between 2014 and 2018. The problem with funding in schools is a prevalent issue in the academics and arts. But these budget cuts are not felt equally and often target the art programs specifically because they are viewed as unnecessary. Many schools today are cutting back or eliminating their art programs due to budget cuts. It's estimated by the end of this year, more than 25% of public high schools will have completely dismantled them. Our art programs are being thrown aside like a used napkin, defunded and devalued. Why? As if they are so bold to assume that there is no great importance of the arts, that math, science, literature are the only ways to learn, that they themselves do not have art woven in their core as well, that student success lies only within the classroom. What they fail to realize is the arts go hand in hand with student success and productivity. Students with art programs in their schools have been proven to be more effective in the classroom, shown in their test scores. Missouri school districts with higher levels of student participation in the arts reported higher graduation rates. Districts with lower levels of arts were districts with higher participation in arts education. Districts with lower level of arts participation reported an average graduation rate of 8.9 compared to an average rate of 91.2 for districts with a higher participation in arts education. Concerns made by my opposition are mostly based upon their misunderstanding of the importance of the arts to the development of our students, both academically and mentally. These students, according to a study led by an organization known as Americans for the Arts, are 4 times more likely to be recognized for academic achievements, 3 times more likely to be elected in class office, and 4 times more likely to participate in math and science fairs. These numbers speak for themselves of showing the weight the creative mind holds over the academic brains. The arts not only accomplish this, but they increase discipline, decrease bullying. A study led by Kathleen Moulin-Harris reports that each additional year of art study was significantly associated with a 20% reduction of the likelihood of an adolescent that would ever be suspended out of school. The dropout rate for students is only 4% of these students that participate in the arts who drop out, which is 5 times lower than in regular cases. Our students perform way better when they are allowed to use the greatest gift of their imagination. Why should we allow our schools to take these essential pieces of education away from us? Our creativity is left to curdle like milk while we study how to measure the amount we can pour back in the carton. Change is necessary if we are to save our programs. Promote outrage for these cuts. Go to your school board and push for these programs to continue to be funded. If they refuse, start fundraisers, bake sales, whatever would work in your setting. Tell your peers to go to plays and card contests and art shows. Keep the arts alive at your school. Self-expression should not be up for debate. If their values of learning are merely rooted in the academics, then they have missed the other ways that schools must teach their students. Through experience and observing, not simply within a textbook. Thank you.
Much. Who would you like to ask to come forward?
I guess Caitlin.
The measles virus first appeared in 9th century Persia. By 1912, it was reported that there were 6,000 measles-related deaths each year in the United States. In 1963, the vaccine had become available to the general public. In 2000, it was finally declared as eliminated. Now, 19 years later, measles has risen again. And not far from my home, north of New York City, 275 cases have been diagnosed, and New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio declared a state of emergency. The root cause of most of these cases is the unwillingness of parents to vaccinate their children. Not vaccinating children poses as a problem to non-vaccinated kids as well as others around them. Since the beginning of the year, 1,077 cases of measles in 10 states have been confirmed by the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention. In comparison, most recent years haven't seen this many cases in an entire 12-month span. Many of this year's cases are part of measles outbreaks in Washington, New York, Texas, Illinois, and Illinois. Experts say most of these outbreaks are fueled by low vaccination rates among children. The number of nationwide cases is so concerning that a congressional hearing was held on this topic earlier this year. But despite countless news articles and doctors' attempts to communicate the risks of measles to their patients, there's a lot of confusion and misinformation about vaccination and measles. Just this April, the wife of a Trump cabinet member, Darla Shine, tweeted that America should bring back childhood diseases like measles because they keep you healthy and fight cancer. According to doctors and measles researchers, statements like these are not only false, but they're also very dangerous. Because while many people who get measles do fully recover, some don't. Some will experience lifelong complications from the illness, and some will even die. But the growing anti-vax movement has been spreading doubt and worry amongst the American population, falsely stating that vaccinating children with the measles vaccine or the MMR vaccine will increase the likelihood for their child to develop autism. Their main forum, Vax.com, utilizes single stories that are often not based on scientific fact to take advantage of the worries of parents and that they have about their children. This faulty logic leads parents to leave their children susceptible to diseases that can be prevented through vaccination. Keeping a clean house is not enough to prevent the spread of deadly disease, and organizations like Vax.com are putting children and their caretakers at risk for serious and potentially deadly diseases. When masses of people are convinced not to vaccinate, it affects the herd immunity. When the herd immunity is above 95%, meaning 95% of the population is vaccinated, the disease is easily contained, and breakouts are almost non-existent. But when parents stop vaccinating their children, this percentage begins to drop below 95%. This not only makes it more likely for people who intentionally don't vaccinate to be infected with the disease, but it removes herd immunity's protection of people who can legitimately not get the vaccine due to a weakened immune system. An example of this is that children under the age of 6 months don't have a strong enough immune system to receive the vaccination and are normally protected by herd immunity. But when herd immunity is weak enough, children up to less than 3 weeks old in other countries have been known to contract this disease. It will not be long until this happens in our own country. Without a strengthened herd immunity, parents are allowing their children and others' children to be like sheep to the slaughter. But there's something you can do. You are the herd. If you have kids, be educated about this issue. Don't get caught by misinformation and false statements. Vaccinate your kids.
Caitlin. A big round of applause.
$1160 was the number that glared back at me from my phone 2 weeks after the March SAT. Shame, guilt, confusion, denial were just some of the feelings that flooded my head. But the most heart-wrenching feeling of all was doubt. Doubt that I would ever get into college with a score like that, despite my high school honor roll credits and NHS president title. Doubt that I would ever get a higher score. Doubt in myself and my ability to become something great at all because of the numbers staring at me. More often than not, colleges and universities look at your one score and decide then that you were not blank university material. As the College Board has showed me, I have a low chance of getting into 464 schools. So how do you convince an admissions board and yourself that you were more than a score? How do you convince a school that your character and leadership skills show more than that one number? How do you convince a school that you're human? You apply to test optional schools. There is a misconception that without an exceptional SAT or ACT score, you will not be attending your dream school in the fall after you graduate high school. But you can apply to schools that understand that your interview, your character, and leadership positions show more about you and what you will bring to their community instead of a rank. You must apply to one of the 950 colleges that have converted to test optional. You must support colleges that care about the individuals that walk into their classrooms and what special perspective they bring to a conversation. The people that say test optional schools make them less competitive are not thinking of the way schools could admit students in the future, possibly without scores. The competition is not lost if standardized scores go away, as there are much more effective ways to prove intelligence. A standardized test score only measures a student's capabilities to perform under pressure and not necessarily how a student will perform in college. There are millions of the same scores, but only one of you as test optional schools prioritize. One study conducted in 2018 by Steve Syverson, an assistant vice president for enrollment management at the University of Washington, shared his conclusions with Insider Higher Ed website, that the tests indeed fail to identify talented applicants who can succeed in higher education. And the test optional movement reflects a broader shift in society away from a narrow assessment of potential. Syverson also states that his study shows that the tests are obstacles not just for students who don't test well, but for students who live in poor districts and states that have less access to resources to prepare for the tests. The study uncovered that there was an application surge from underrepresented minority students, creating a 58% increase in diversity on campus when the schools went test optional. The study also found underrepresented minority students were more likely than others to decide not to submit. Among Black students, 35% opted not to submit, but the figure was only 18% for white students. Women were also more likely than men to decide not to submit scores. The fear was gone from minority students' minds that they could never catch up to their more fortunate counterparts. These shocking statistics are the very reason that test optional schools matter, because the test is made for the people that can pay to learn the answers. As William C. Hiss pointed out, a former dean of admissions and financial counselor at Bates College, who worked closely with Syverson on the same study, concluded that the effects of test optional colleges show no signs of academic slide or low graduation rates, as he told the Chronicle website in 2018. I'm sure we have all watched a friend or another student get the news that they did not perform as well as a college's averages scores would have liked and shut down. A future of test optional schools could change the stigma around bad standardized test scores, because you are more than a score. For 1 second, I would like all of you to envision the impact that test optional schools could have on unfortunate test takers and minorities. Could this push to see less tests and more character change their life as well as the atmosphere of a college? Absolutely. By applying to only test optional schools, you are making the impact that companies like the College Board and colleges will see. An impact that will matter unlike any score that could ever claim to equal a student's future potential. You're saying that you will not settle for this so-called defining factor in admission. No one deserves to feel less than because of a lack of resources or luck of the draw. So choose the colleges that choose you. Thank you.
All right, let's take a brief break here, 5 minutes, walk down to the restroom, grab a drink.
No.